Did you give them my details?
Because you give me your details.
Right, that's against the law. It's a breach of my personal data. You should not have done that. You have not. You should not have done that.
Welcome to Rate the Encounters, where police power meets public accountability.
This episode is brought to you by Auditor Brett Chamberlain. Be sure to check the link below, subscribe to his channel, and give him the credit he deserves. In this episode, Brett presents another explosive coin audit. After refueling Key at a Sainsbury's petrol station, he attempts to pay using pure silver Royal Mint coins. However, staff refuse the payment, call the police, and even throw his money around. When an officer arrives, she appears completely out of her depth, misunderstanding the law and infringing Brett's rights so severely that he is forced to contact his solicitor. The officer's conduct was so poor that even her own inspector later admitted she would require retraining. Before we get into today's video, I want to give a massive shout out to T for joining RTA Extra. In today's climate, where freedoms are increasingly challenged and authority is exerting more pressure than ever, it is crucial that we stand together. By joining RTA Extra...
Hands over the coins as tender. Yeah. Obviously, it is legal tender, you are correct. Yeah. But as Sainsbury's, we aren't obliged to take that because we aren't able to bank that here. So unfortunately, we will have to ask for some other means of payment to purchase that fuel.
What do you think legal tender actually means?
Pardon?
What do you think legal tender means?
I'm not into a debate about that. We're not accepting that as a tender here. It's a private company.
So you accept it as legal tender?
Yeah, but we can't bank that here. We don't have the means to bank it, so we don't accept it.
That's not my problem if you can't bank it, is it?
Well, yeah, but we don't accept it.
Well, you already have.
No, we haven't. You just put it down.
No, I gave it to the lady and she put it in her hand.
So, have you got any other means of payment?
That is my means of payment.
So, have you not got any other means?
But that is my means of payment.
Well, and we can't accept that means.
Brett highlights a key moment when the worker physically takes the coins into her hand. The instant that occurred, the debt was discharged. Payment had effectively been made. While businesses can refuse Royal Mint coins if such a policy is clearly stated before a transaction, that was not the case here. The fuel had already been dispensed and the goods had been consumed, thereby creating a debt. Once a debt exists, legal tender must be accepted. You cannot accept lawful payment and then disregard it simply because it is inconvenient to process. This is precisely where Sainsbury's and later the attending officer went wrong. They confused convenience with legality.
Have you got another means of payment, or do we just need to process it as a civil recovery issue?
Well, I've paid.
Well, you haven't. We haven't accepted it.
You don't need to. Well, you have accepted it. Well, I haven't got the money, have I? You've got the money.
Well, we can give it back to you.
Well, I don't want it back. Are you a police officer?
Yes.
Right, can you identify yourself, please? What number are you?
1866, Bridgewater Police Station.
Mrs. Bradshaw, Miss Bradshaw.
That's correct. Miss.
Miss.
Sorry.
Right.
So they've asked for another form of payment because they can't accept this form. Have you got another form of payment on you?
That is my payment.
Right, okay, but that's not tender that they can accept.
Yes, it is.
They're asking for another form
yes,
of payment.
Yes, it is. Let me explain something to you. So when you was training to be a police officer at the beginning, you swore an oath, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what the first sentence of the oath was? It was to serve the Queen faithfully.
Correct.
Right. Now, those coins are legal tender by royal proclamation of the Queen herself.
Okay.
Right. She's authorised within the legislation for the Royal Mint to create those coins, and when she proclaimed them to be legal tender, she said that they are legal tender for payment throughout the United Kingdom.
When the officer arrives, she simply repeats what Sainsbury's staff have told her, as though store policy overrides statutory law. Brett quickly challenges this by reminding her of the oath she took upon becoming a police officer to serve the Crown faithfully. That is the crucial point. These coins were not merely pieces of metal. They were declared legal tender by royal proclamation under Section 2 of the Coinage Act 1971. It is the Crown, through the Royal Mint, that determines what constitutes legal tender in the United Kingdom. Brett was not expressing an opinion. He was citing the very authority she is sworn to uphold. By linking her oath to that proclamation, he exposed the weakness of her position.
They've allowed me to take goods, and and then pay after the event. When the fuel goes into my vehicle, it becomes my fuel, but then it becomes a debt. Okay, now, the whole point of legal tender is that you can use it to pay a debt. As the Queen said, it's for payment throughout the United Kingdom. Okay. So they don't have to accept it, and if they was to give it back to me, it would negate the debt. Okay, it's not a police matter, it's a civil dispute. So really, you know, I mean, really, you should be telling them that it's a civil dispute.
I've just spoken to them and said about the document whereby you can come back and pay within 24 hours. They're saying that they don't want to accept the tender that you've given them. Is there an alternative method?
I'm not going to pay it any other way. I've already paid. Okay, and regarding that document, it's called a no means to pay document, isn't it? Right, I'm not filling out a no means to pay document when I have got the means to pay and I've paid. It's almost like an acceptance that I haven't got the means to pay when I have.
The officer then attempts to impose a no means to pay document on Brett. This form is typically used when someone genuinely has no way of paying. For example, if they have forgotten their wallet, their card has failed, or they have no funds available. In such cases, the individual acknowledges the debt and agrees to return later to settle it. However, this situation was entirely different. Brett did have a means to pay. He was holding legal tender issued by the Royal Mint. That alone removes the situation from the no means to pay category. By attempting to force him to complete the form, both the officer and Sainsbury's were effectively rewriting the facts, disregarding a lawful payment simply because they did not wish to accept it.
May I take your name, please?
No. Oh, yes, you will, because I'm driving.
Sorry?
Yes, you can, because I'm driving. Sorry. There you go. Although technically parked up on private land. I'll be going soon, as soon as I finish dealing with it.
Is that the money?
No, I don't want that. If you give it back, then it negates the debt. Did you see that, officer? Officer?
Yes,
I've paid and she's thrown the money back in.
They've asked for another form of
No,
payment.
she's thrown the money back in.
Okay.
Do you understand? Can you explain to them that negates the debt? You can't pay someone and then they just throw the money back at you.
Do paperwork.
Do you want to remind them of that?
There we are. So that's the details of the transaction, sir, okay?
Ma'am, can you show it to me? I paid it though.
Yeah, but it's unacceptable tender.
Officer, did you witness them give me the coins back, didn't you? When I have paid, yeah?
I've witnessed them give you the coins back. I've also witnessed them say that it's unacceptable tender. They're not willing to accept it. Therefore, they've asked for another form of payment. You haven't provided it, so that's hence why they're giving you the form.
Well, I don't want that.
When the officer asks Brett for his name while he is seated in his vehicle, he is legally required to provide it. Under the Road Traffic Act 1988, any driver of a motor vehicle on a road or in a public place must supply their name and address when requested by a uniformed constable. This obligation applies regardless of the circumstances of the stop. Therefore, in that moment, Brett had no choice but to comply. However, what follows raises further concerns. Shortly afterwards, a Sainsbury's employee returns with a no means to pay form already completed with Brett's details. Crucially, Brett had neither signed nor agreed to this document, and he had clearly stated that he was paying with legal tender. This raises a critical question. How were his personal details obtained in the first place?
Can you give these coins back to her, or can you keep them as evidence?
I'm not giving the coins back.
Well, you do realise it negates the debt anyway.
They haven't accepted
I don't want that either, and that's nothing to do with me. I would like a receipt though, please.
You've been
I
served
can't
with
give you
it.
a receipt. The transaction's still outstanding, I'm afraid.
Do they have to give me a receipt for VAT purposes?
You haven't paid for
I
it
have
because
paid.
they haven't accepted the tender.
I have paid. They had it in their hand. They threw it back in the car.
Okay, but they
You
haven't
witnessed they
accepted,
threw it
they
back in
haven't
the...
accepted the tender, so therefore there isn't a
So
payment.
it's for, as I said to you earlier, the Queen said that
I
these...
understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
and you've obviously done your research.
Yeah.
What they're saying is it's not acceptable form of tender. They're not accepting it, therefore the debt hasn't been paid.
But you're an
hence
officer of the
why-
law, aren't you? You're a sergeant or just a PC?
PC. Hence
Yeah.
why they've given you this, because they want you to pay in another acceptable form of tender.
So what do you think, if they said that they didn't want to accept a £50 note and threw the £50 notes back in, yeah, and then gave me that, would you think that's reasonable?
Well, you
Or £20
have to
notes.
offer another form of payment.
Then dismantles the argument with a clear example. If someone offers a $50 note and the store rejects it, only to then insist on a no means to pay form, would anyone consider that reasonable? The principle is identical here. Once legal tender is offered, the debt is settled. Refusal of that payment is not the customer's failure, it is the business's. Yet the officer fails to grasp this. Instead, she continues to insist that Brett should provide an alternative method of payment. That is not law, it is merely preference. By prioritizing convenience over legality, she transformed a resolved debt into an unnecessary dispute, undermining her own position entirely.
So say I had 50s and £20 notes, okay, and I went in there to pay them, and they said, "Oh, sorry, we don't accept those," right? Yeah, but even though this is theoretical, yeah, we don't accept those, and I say, "Well, I've paid, and I've left the money on the counter," and they came and threw them back in the car. Would you still be saying that it's up to me to pay in some other way?
But they just said that's an acceptable form of tender.
Yeah, but it's not down to them as to whether it's acceptable or not. It's down to the state.
They don't deem that acceptable.
It's down to the state. It's not for them to
right.
choose.
Well, they've served you with this. They haven't accepted payment.
I don't want that. That's nothing to do with me.
Right, okay. Well, you've seen it. She's shown you it.
Yep.
Okay?
I don't know what it is. I don't even know what it is. What is it? I haven't signed it. What is it? No means to pay form or something like that? How did they get my details? Did you give them my details?
Because you've given me your details.
Right, that's against the law. It's a breach of my personal data. You should not have done that. You have not. You should not have done that.
You haven't paid.
You know that. You should not have done that.
You haven't paid.
As the officer presents the no means to pay form, Brett immediately notices something alarming. His name has already been filled in. He challenges her directly. How were his details obtained? Astonishingly, she admits that she provided them to the store, claiming it was acceptable because he had already given them to her. This constitutes a serious breach of GDPR and data protection law. The officer obtained Brett's details under the authority of the Road Traffic Act, powers strictly limited to road traffic matters. Sharing that information with a private supermarket, in what is clearly a civil dispute, is entirely unlawful. Police officers have a duty to protect personal data, not distribute it to private entities for convenience. Yet, instead of addressing this breach, the officer continues to repeat the same claim, that Brett has not paid. This represents a complete failure of duty, misusing police powers to serve a commercial interest while violating an individual's legal rights. It is not merely unprofessional, it is deeply concerning misconduct.
You've given them I'll be lodging a complaint about this, and you know you're going to be in trouble for that, don't you? No.
You're not.
You know that you're going to be in trouble for that, don't you? Because you're not allowed to give them my personal details.
Yeah.
Breach of my data. Police giving private corporation my details. They threw the money back in the car. We'll be lodging a complaint with 101, I think, straight away.
In his follow-up, Brett explains how the complaint unfolded, and the outcome is staggering. The police response stated that the officer had done nothing wrong, effectively endorsing conduct that allowed a private company to refuse legal tender, mishandle a customer's payment, and misuse police powers to obtain personal data. This is not a case of no wrongdoing. It is a clear example of blurred lines between public authority and corporate convenience. Brett rightly points out how the situation took on a potentially fraudulent dimension. By obtaining his personal details through police involvement, Sainsbury's was able to complete a no means to pay form without his consent, effectively creating a contract he never agreed to. That is the true issue at the heart of this case. The officer was not simply mistaken. She enabled a private entity to misuse police authority to rectify its own error. In a further update, Brett reveals that while his solicitor confirmed he had grounds for legal action, it was not considered worthwhile to pursue in court. Nevertheless, the consequences were significant. The officer's own inspector confirmed she would require retraining, a clear, albeit understated admission of fault. When an officer must be retrained following a single incident, it demonstrates that the citizen involved had a stronger understanding of the law than the officer enforcing it. What makes this case particularly striking is how quickly a routine transaction escalated into a broader lesson on policing failures. Brett remained calm, cooperative, and fully within the law. He was exercising a fundamental right, the ability to settle a debt using recognized legal tender. Yet the response he encountered revealed a lack of legal understanding from those tasked with upholding the law. From the outset, Sainsbury's staff had no authority to refuse legal tender for an existing debt. However, the situation escalated when the attending officer chose to support corporate policy over statutory law. Rather than de-escalating, she reinforced misinformation, treating store policy as though it superseded national legislation. This case highlights a broader issue, where convenience is prioritized over justice. Throughout the encounter, Brett remained composed and precise. Each time the narrative was distorted, he responded with clear legal reasoning. His $50 note and example exposed the fundamental flaw in their argument, that refusing payment after service is not a business choice, but a breach of obligation. By the conclusion, the officer's position had entirely collapsed, and her attempt to intervene only worsened matters when she improperly shared Brett's personal information. Ultimately, Brett left the situation